This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl Miriam Joie.
Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is Wednesday, July 19th, 2017. I have a very awesome guest today, and his name is Jaime Rivera. Jaime, how are you?
I am doing great, and you are awesome. Are you kidding me? It's such a pleasure for you to have me. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. We're basically going to fight on who's got the most awesomeness today.
Oh my God, you win by a long shot.
No, I don't know about that. You're pretty awesome. So, you write for Pocketnow, and
Yes.
you do a daily video for Pocketnow. That's probably your biggest gig, right?
That it would be the daily video, plus I've been doing reviews for a while, yes, as well.
Cool. So you're definitely a phone guy, and that's why we've got you on. I mean, this is a mobile device show, really. I get distracted with smartwatches and electric cars and a bunch of other things, but we do tend to stick it, to stick to the phones. So there's one thing I wanted to kind of touch on, and there's a bunch of rumors or a bunch of phones going on. I discussed some of them last week about the Moto Z2 that's going to be coming. I launched at some event next week. Are you going to be in New York for that?
I actually won't be in New York. I'm currently in Honduras. I'm originally from Honduras, and I come spend summers here, which is funny because people say that the weather in New York is better in the summer. But no, I won't be in New York, sadly. But I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait to see what Moto comes up with, even though most of the rumors just show pretty much an iteration.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really curious to see if they're going to bring back the headphone jack, honestly, because I have a feeling they might, which would be the first company to kind of change their minds on that in a way.
I hope so.
I hope so too, because the Z2 Play, the Z Play and the Z2 Play both have headphone jacks and are part of that series.
Yeah.
And they're thin phones. I mean, especially the Z2 Play, and it didn't hurt them to add that headphone jack. In fact, it's one of the best sounding mid-range phones if you have a good pair of headphones, like your Sennheisers, for example. If you get your hands on a Moto Z2 Play, you should, because overall it's a fantastic mid-ranger. Yeah. And the sound quality out of that thing is really top notch, despite it just being like a, sold as $400 mid-ranger.
Now, for me, this whole move to USB-C audio is it's such a nightmare. I mean, I do understand companies trying to use that whole courage argument, but the problem is having to use proprietary dongles the problem is not really using dongles. It's the fact that the dongle on the Moto Z Play doesn't work on the Moto Z2, or on the Moto Z, doesn't work on the HTC U11, for example. It's a different DAC on each one.
So here's the thing. It's actually more complicated than that, and I actually talked about this on my podcast, so let's do it again. Let's have a little rant about USB Type-C audio, shall we? Because I think this is needed. So here's the problem. The problem is this, Jaime. There are two standards. There's an analog standard and a digital standard on USB Type-C.
Right.
Now, everyone in the entire world so far is using the analog standard except HTC.
Oh, really?
So it's not a Moto versus HTC issue. It's the fact that Le Eco with the Le Pro 2 and Le Pro 3, they also use analog USB-C audio. So that means that the dongle for the Le Eco works on the Moto Z. I've tested this.
Oh, really? I haven't tested it. I have the dongle somewhere.
The dongle for the Moto Z works just fine on the Le Eco. These are the only two phones I have with analog USB-C audio. But
interesting.
The HTC is in a different realm.
Now, the question is, do you know if the reason why HTC uses digital is for the whole Sonic, that whole thing where it cancels
audio? But here's the thing. Here's the cincher. Here's the killer.
Interesting.
The Moto Z and the Le Eco Le Pro 2 and Le Pro 3 also have digital support on USB-C.
Oh.
So the proprietary HTC headphones don't get recognized, but the U11 audio adapter that's in the box is a digital audio adapter, and it gets recognized just fine by any phone, including a Pixel.
Oh, that is okay.
Because it's just a sound card. Now, think about this for a second.
I thought it was a proprietary DAC. Like when
it is not a proprietary DAC. I have debunked this myth.
Interesting, because we have Juan Bagnell, who's our expert camera guy and audio guy, and he just couldn't believe that companies like Apple were able to figure out how to fit a DAC in such a small little connector on the Lightning port. And we assumed that was the same thing that was happening with these dongles. Now, regardless, I don't know about you, Miriam, but my biggest problem with these dongles is if you ask me where the dongle of my U11 is, I have no clue.
Yeah, I left it in the box. So here's the thing. Look, I agree with you. It's like, but just to understand clearly, this is what is going on. Any phone that has a USB-C connector on it and is running Nougat supports digital audio over USB-C. If you plug a digital sound device of any kind that's a standard, just like on any computer, the same as like an external headphone amp that's USB for a laptop, all of that would work if you can find an adapter for USB-C. Now, there are power requirements. It can't be too power hungry, this device, right? Because this is not a computer you're plugging in, this is a phone you're plugging in. So I think they're capping it off at something like 100 or 200 milliamp of power draw. So for example, if you have a higher end digital audio headphone amp that's USB based, it won't work on a Pixel, for example, because it's trying to draw too much current. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't work. But this is the Pixel that's blocking this. Correct. If you plug a hub into the Pixel and you power that hub, you can use that device, not a problem at all. So what I'm saying is that the dongle inside the HTC box is like the dongle for Apple. It is a digital dongle with a DAC and an amp in it. Yes. And that one has low power. It will work on any of the USB-C phones with Nougat that I've tested so far. The BlackBerry KEYone, no problem. I mean, all of them. The problem with this is it sounds like crap. They put the cheapest part to make it a $15 device, and it sounds horrendous. Like it's worse than any HTC phone that was released in the last 10 years in terms of audio quality.
True. It was a major drop from the HTC 10.
Yeah, and they want you to use their proprietary headphones, which to me honestly sound like crap. This whole Usonic sound tuning thing doesn't, works, but doesn't make any difference. It doesn't change the fact that the drivers on this thing are crap. Like I'm used to, $300 in-ear monitors. I'm not going to want to deal with that kind of sound quality. I want to plug in my own stuff. I'm sorry, guys.
And that's the thing. I mean, usually, what's the price of Oppo came out with this audio deck a couple of years ago. I think that thing was like $1,000 bundled with the headphones, and the DAC was the size of the phone. I mean, if to my understanding, I guess that's what surprised me the most. Like the audio DACs that I've seen, with the exception of devices like the LG V20, which I don't know how they fit that thing in there, but I've never seen a DAC that small. I don't know what to expect from that, and the results have not been. I can't tell you that they're great. I agree with you. I don't even use the bundled headphones. I've stuck to Bluetooth, which I can't even say it's worse. If anything,
if you have aptX over Bluetooth, it's decent, right? Because aptX is a really high quality codec.
Oh yes. But the point being is, I love choice. It's one of the major reasons why my U11 is in a drawer. Because, for example, my car doesn't have Bluetooth audio, and my car here in Honduras, it's a pickup truck, and so I can't modify the stereo system. I can't pull it out.
Right.
So what do I do? All I have is an aux cable. And that aux cable only connects to a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. There is no option where there is a male 3.5 millimeter to an extended USB-C connector. There are no cables like that yet. So it just becomes a nightmare of peripherals that you have to be buying around whenever they exist. But like, for example, right now, if you want those USB-C dongles, and thank you for sharing. I had no clue that some of these dongles actually work between phones. So let
me actually tell you a few more things about that before, so we can establish a baseline.
Sure.
There is, if you go to Amazon right now or any kind of online retailer, you can buy USB Type-C to 3.5 millimeter dongle.
Okay.
That one is the analog kind used by the Moto Z and the LeEco. It is a completely passive device. There's no electronics in it other than a little resistor that when you plug it in says to the phone, hey, I'm an analog audio Type-C device, and from the Pixel you'll get a finger up because they'll say I don't know how to do that. From the U11 you'll get a finger up. I don't know how to use that. And the only phones that you won't get a finger up from are the Moto Z and the LeEco Pro 2 or Pro 3 or the Moto Z Force, for example.
Interesting.
So what I'm saying is that it's much cheaper to make an analog USB-C audio adapter, but those you have to understand what happens with those is inside the phone there is a full-on DAC and amp that are connected to the USB-C connector. And when the connector sees the right resistance on the right pins, it says, oh, let's pipe the audio output from the DAC and amp to the right pins on the USB-C and fire out some audio from the phone. So, of course, using the phone's DAC and amp, it sounds great. Like the Moto Z with its adapter sounds fantastic because the DAC is high quality. It's probably Qualcomm's high quality DAC in there from the 820. Right. So that makes sense. And that honestly to me is a better option than what HTC did, because by having to put all the electronics outboard, they basically made it so that their dongle had to be either expensive and sound good, or cheap and sound like crap.
See, this is the reason why I like talking to you. This is the reason why I like having conversations with you. There is no way I can't sit down with you for 5 minutes and learn something. There's just no way I won't. I love talking to you, Miriam. Honestly, I had no clue about this. And to be honest with you, it could be. But to my understanding, Apple did the exact same thing. If anything, it seems that HTC is mimicking what Apple did and pulling the DAC out of the phone and just making it part of the dongle.
And it's fine. The difference is Apple put a decent DAC and a decent amp in their dongle. Not a great DAC or a great amp, but something I could live with every day. But I don't know who engineered this dongle at HTC, but it's a nightmare.
Well, and that is for you. Bad. And that is for you. Like, for example, I'm currently doing a video on the 7 Plus, the After the Bus series that we do, where we revisit phones after a few months. And the problem with that dongle from the Lightning dongle is, for example, if I want to use LG's these B&O headphones that came with the V20, they work, but it seems that the connector, the loops on the 3.5 millimeter jack, it seems that they make an interference with that dongle, and therefore I can't hear whack. I can't hear anything. It like every so often it'll pause the music, or every sort of movement that happens, it'll pause the music or just throw some odd noise. And so it's even that solution is pointless. I mean, it's like if they're trying to force people to go wireless. And sure, aptX is great, but
it's not as good as wired. Never.
It's never going to be as good as wired. It just
even
isn't.
aptX HD. Honestly, aptX HD is like the 96 kilohertz 24-bit version of aptX, and it's lossless and it's great. It sounds fantastic, I have to say, but it's still like a good pair of wired headphones still will like obliterate with a good DAC and amp this solid setup, because you're relying on your headphones DAC and amp, like the wireless headphones DAC and amp, to be high quality. And honestly, even the best are still kind of sacrificing this in the name of packaging, right? Even Sennheiser and Audio-Technica, they're putting these they have to put a Bluetooth radio, a microcontroller with firmware, a DAC, and a headphone amp, and a battery, all inside the ear cup. Even on a big pair of headphones, you're taking away real estate from the diaphragm, from the actual earpiece.
From the purpose of what you're buying. You're buying those things for the quality of the audio, not for all the hurdles that have to happen for you to be able to be connected.
Yeah.
I don't know. I love Bluetooth, don't get me wrong. For me, the move to Bluetooth, even though I find it convenient and I use it every day for going to the gym or whatever, it's just that nightmare where you and I have 10 phones in a drawer. Sometimes we have to be switching around.
And we have 10 headphones in a drawer, right?
Exactly.
Because, I mean, for me, I have a whole bunch of different really high quality. Some of them are 20 years old, Jaime, with like perfectly good 3.5 millimeter headphone jacks at the end.
Yes, and you don't want to stop using them. I've fallen in love with some of these. And I don't want to move on. I'm sorry, but they don't make them. It's funny, but this phrase is just so true. In certain cases in technology, they don't make them like they used to. Some things you want to keep.
Get off my lawns, kids. Yeah, totally. No, look, I agree. Look, we are in agreement. I just wanted to, I know that some of you on this podcast who are listening right now are rolling your eyes going, Miriam, not again, not the USB-C discussion. I know that not all of you listened to my podcast before this, so you need to be informed. These are important things. Now, if you don't care about audio or you don't really care about having a dongle, all the best to you. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the dongle if you're willing to live with it, if you know where it is, if you don't lose it, if you're willing to not charge at the same time. All these things are not an issue for you. Awesome. Just be aware there's going to be a sound quality issue now. And the sound quality issue is that if on a phone like the Pixel or the U11 that don't support analog output over USB-C, you're gonna need to use a dongle that's digital, and that dongle, you better spend money on it, otherwise it's gonna sound like crap.
Yes.
And there are third parties. Thankfully, there are a few coming out. There's a few being crowdfunded right now that have really high quality, because the ESS chip that's inside the V20 and the G6, the Korean edition, or the G6 Plus,
Yes.
those are a single tiny chip. So they're not really big in terms of real estate.
Interesting.
As long as they have a good power supply, and a nice clean stream of digital audio coming their way, they will output some remarkable analog audio. That's
oh my
what made
God,
ESS.
The V20. Ugh,
Yeah, so
the
that's what
V20.
made the ESS chip so well sought after with the audiophiles. Is that
But only
kind of-
LG is
it kind of
investing
blew our
in
mind.
this.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, because I think they have maybe an exclusive agreement with ESS on this. I think ESS developed this chip specifically for smartphones, to be honest with you.
Really?
So, yeah, and honestly, I'm not sure how much analog electronics are around the chip, because the chip itself can be small. The problem with, like, you need a good headphone amp, and the headphone amp requires capacitors. They're
Yes.
large, they take up room on the board. So the problem is, I don't know how small they can make those, if they can even fit an ESS chip and the ancillary electronics in a adapter. But if they can, dude, the day there's an ESS USB-C to 3.5 millimeter adapter out there, I am going to use that on my Pixel and my phone that have headphone jacks, just because the sound quality is going to be even better.
It's going to be insane, yes. Oh
So
my
the
God.
digital audio out on the USB-C per se is not a problem. Like, I support the fact that I plug a sound card into USB-C and it works. That should be the case.
Yes.
The problem is that this hack of using the analog output with a resistor that tells, it's insane. And then people buy these things on eBay, right? Like, if you didn't know, and you have a U Ultra, right, which didn't come
Yes.
with the dongle, and you're like, I want a headphone jack, and HTC sells their dongle for $13, $15, whatever dollars on their website.
Yeah.
But hey, Amazon has one from made in China for $3. I'm going to buy it.
You don't know
It gets
that.
to you, and it doesn't work because
And
it's an
it doesn't
analog
work.
dongle. And at that point, you get really angry, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, this is the kind of problem that we're going to run into. That's why, to me, look, keep the headphone jack as long as we can. It doesn't take that much room on the phone.
Oh my God.
Even a 4 millimeter thick phone, all you need is 4 millimeters. It's
Listen,
3.5 millimeter around.
I just did my after the buzz on the Huawei P10.
Yeah.
This phone is practical, it's compact, it's delicious, it's beautiful, and it's got a jack.
I agree.
It's got a terrible audio. Sadly, the audio from the P10 is not
It's
great.
not the greatest.
It's not the
Huawei
greatest.
Still needs, yes, they have their own chipsets, and I don't think they have the expertise in house right now to create really good DAC.
No,
But it's better than the dongle on the U11. Trust me on this.
It is better. That is true. But yes, I mean, in the case of, if companies like Huawei are able to fit so much technology into such a petite phone, what's the excuse, HTC? Like, seriously, if anything, if there's a company that I look up to for innovation, it's HTC. And for the past couple of years, it's just fumbling. And I'm like, listen, if the solution is proprietary, I'm not saying it doesn't work for you. Proprietary solutions work when your ecosystem is big, like in the case of Apple. Apple has the made for iPhone, and there are companies that license this like crazy. But in the case of HTC, they don't have the ecosystem. Going proprietary is not the solution for a company this small. At least that's the way I see it.
You totally nailed it on the head, because look, that's the thing. Like, regardless of this, this discussion and argument and rant about the technology and how it's implemented, ultimately HTC is not in a position business-wise, in my opinion, to make this kind of mistake, in my opinion. Like, because here's the thing, nothing prevented them from having support for analog over USB-C as well, plus a headphone jack, and still bundle the Usonic headphones and still have them only work with their phone.
Yes, and they're like, listen, if you want an analog audio noise cancellation, or whatever they're calling it, because they actually call it different. If you want that, use the Usonics, or sell them separately, or give them at a discount.
Put them in the box if you really want them to use it. Put them in the box. People are going to use them. But then don't remove the headphone jack, or at least support the analog output. Put a cheap $3 dongle that's completely boring and does nothing in there. So at least that those of us who are using really high quality headphones can plug into the analog output of the USB-C port and go like, oh, this is a hassle, but this still sounds good. Like HTC's always sounded good.
And you know what's even worse? When is it that you want to use like your really high quality headphones? If you're doing a 15-hour flight to Hong Kong from San Francisco, this is where you want to use this. Now, question. how does your phone behave on a flight this long, particularly devices like the U11 that don't have an amazing battery? I mean, this is the moment where I'm like, okay, if you're going to bundle that dongle, could you please add an extra connector, or just give me two USB-C connectors, or whatever? Just do something, because when you're in a long flight, you can't rely on a phone. It just, I have never had a phone last this long as a flight from Los Angeles to Hong Kong, for example. Never. I have to be charging it. My experience charging it, during that period of time, I won't be able to use my phone. How many times have you fallen asleep on the plane and you forget to leave your stuff charging? It happens to me all the time. And so when I wake up, my phone is dead, and it just becomes such a nightmare. I mean,
I know, and here's the other thing: by having using the analog output over USB-C, even though I still would prefer a headphone jack, a real one, it doesn't waste battery as much because there's no electronics in the dongle. It's going to be the built-in DAC and headphone amp that are always on anyway. So whatever.
Yes, exactly. Bring back the headphone jack.
Seriously. I mean, you HTC just like they can't get away with this. Moto, at least, I wasn't happy with Moto doing this. At least they went the analog route, which makes the adapters cheap and universal. Yes. And I think they're going to reverse it because, look, honestly, they got so much bad press.
They got a lot of heat from it.
And they learned from last year's feedback on their phones so far with the Z2 Play. As I said, I know we just touched on it barely, but the Z2 Play is really rocking my boat this year. Like for a mid-ranger, wow. And the fact that it supports mods makes it even juicier to me. But so I'm really excited to see what happens next week on the 25th of July at this Moto event, to see what they do with the Z2 and Z2 Force, if there's a Z2 Force this year.
It's going to be interesting. Now, what battery life are you getting on that Z2 Play by any chance?
It's a little less than the Z Play last year, but with 500 milliamp less in the battery, it still means that chip, that new 626 chip,
oh my God, that's Snapdragon 6. That 6 series is just crazy. I mean, the battery on the KEYone is like, when I sat down with BlackBerry, and here we are shifting focus again, but it's like when I sat down. That's what we do
on this podcast.
And I love it. But when I sat down with these people from BlackBerry, and they were like, I remember that my colleague was there, and he's like, what? No Snapdragon 835 or no Snapdragon 821? But I was like, no, wait a second. So what makes me remember the BlackBerry? Why was I such a fan of BlackBerries? Have you ever tried to kill the battery of one of those old BlackBerries?
It's impossible.
They would last forever. And so I'm like, no, this is genius. This is exactly what this phone had to bring. It needs to bring epic battery life. I don't need so much power on a screen that's not 16:9 at least. I'm not going to be playing games on this thing. This phone is a communicator. It is designed to help me always be connected. And this is the perfect decision. I loved it. Oh my God, I love the KEYone.
I do too. I think everybody, look, I think we've discussed the KEYone in this podcast this is the 10th episode. We've discussed it from episode 1. In every show, every guest has said something good about the KEYone. I love it. I'm no longer using it in my rotation right now because I got other phones to try out. But I would definitely, it holds a special place in my heart. And even though I told Elena last week, I think, or Rose the week before, that I can't get used to the hardware keyboard. Like I appreciate it. I think it's fantastic, but I still type faster on glass.
And but here's the thing, Miriam. Go ahead.
Even with that, I would live with it. I would take that as my primary device any day.
Now tell me something, and this is something that I actually asked the engineers in my briefing. So you're telling me that this phone has capacitive sensors on the keyboard, that it's actually capable of detecting my sliding in this. So why weren't you able to build the same capacitive technology for me to just touch the keys and not have to press them? Because the biggest problem is not really it's not really the muscle memory that I need to go back to the keyboard. It's the fact that keyboard is crap. It's very mushy, very hard to press. Even after testing it for a month, I don't like the hardware keyboard. I mean, if they brought the Q10 keyboard, I think it was the Q10, right? If they brought that was old, a pretty good one. Yeah, that was a pretty good keyboard. Oh my God, the BlackBerry Bold keyboard. If they brought keys,
the Bold is the best.
It was delicious.
I think it was the 9900 that was the best, according to Crackberry Kevin, who by the way was on show number 2. And we discussed the KEYone extensively with him. You know, the KEYone, to me, I actually don't feel the keyboard to be, I mean, it's definitely not the best BlackBerry hardware keyboard ever made, but I don't feel it to be the worst either. It's somewhere in the middle. But you're right. For me, the biggest challenge is, remember, like, I often will pick up the KEYone and I'll start typing by just touching the keys.
Yes.
Not pressing on them.
Yes, exactly.
And then I realized,
I'm like, why couldn't you do that?
I have to click on them. And the clicking part is what I'm like, I'm too old. My fingers are too arthritic for this. Ugh. You know, I'm joking, of course.
I agree. And I that's the only part I didn't like about that phone. It was like, why couldn't you just build this in? I mean, bring it as a software update. That would be an interesting
setting to have for sure, yeah. And then they can do a swipe keyboard. They could do a swipe keyboard then.
Yes. Why not?
Right?
I mean, there are so many things. It's a capacitive sensor.
Yeah, it's kind of cool though that the way they implemented it with the fingerprint reader and the space bar.
I love
the KEYone, so good. But back to your question, the Z2 Play. So just to be clear with the listeners who might not know, the Z Play last year was this awesome mid-range phone from Moto that slotted in the Z range with the Moto mods, but was cheaper and had cheaper specs.
But had everything we wanted. But it had everything we wanted.
Most importantly, it had a Snapdragon 625, which is in the KEYone, and a 3,500 milliamp hour battery, which made its battery life redonkulous.
Eternal.
I know that in Asia there's phones with 4,000 milliamp hour batteries, and in fact there's a phone in the US you can get with a very large battery, the Mate 9 from Huawei.
Yes.
And last year's or the year before's Mate 8 was an incredible marathon runner as well.
Yes.
But the point is, for a phone that's just sold at Verizon, you know, like you don't need to like be a some sort of like special phone person like we are. You can just pick up this phone and you get this amazing battery life benefit. So there was a lot of like turmoil, I would say, when Moto announced the Z2 Play, the replacement, the first of the Z2 series with mods. By the way, the mods are all compatible with last year. There's no change there.
Yes.
But that phone, because they said the battery has gone from 3,500 to 3,000, and they made it thinner, and people like, no, you don't understand. The phone was a little thicker.
Was the coolest
that was
part
okay,
of the phone.
And the battery was amazing. That's what we loved. But it turns out that new Snapdragon, the 626 that they put in the Z2 Play, is actually pretty damn awesome. And yes, you will get probably 80 to 90% of battery life of last year. So you won't get quite the same battery life, but it's still better than most phones. So that's the cool thing about it.
Yes.
And then on top of that, the camera's better. You know, it's just it really is sexier. Being thinner, I'm sorry, it's a crapshoot for me, right? I get it. The thickness and battery life is important, but a sexy thin phone, this thing is only 1 millimeter thicker than last year's Moto Z, the normal Z, which was 5 millimeters. So this is 6 millimeters, and it has a headphone jack, and it has incredible battery life, and it costs $409 on Verizon. And I'm not a Verizon fan, you know that. I don't care about Verizon. But I will have to say that them teaming up with Moto has been kind of a good marriage, because the other phone that I want to kind of briefly touch on, and I want to know if you've had a chance to play with, Jaime, is the Moto E4.
No, I didn't get the E4 either.
The E4, spec-wise, is what the G3 was 2 years ago.
Yes.
It's uncanny. And get this, they sell it on prepaid for Verizon for $70.
Yes.
Mind blown. Guys, for $70, you could live with this phone for 2 years and be fine.
Yes.
That's how good it is. And it works it's a prepaid phone, but if you buy it somehow, you can put a normal Verizon SIM in it and it just works like on a postpaid SIM.
And not only that, I mean, all Verizon phones are unlocked by law. So, I mean, people can actually get the Verizon prepaid and actually swap an AT&T SIM card on it.
Yeah, but LTE doesn't always work because it doesn't always support all the right bands. So I haven't tested that, but that's something we should test on the Z2 Play and the E4. In
the case of the E4, probably yes, because of its price tag. It won't support some of the bands. I would definitely look into it, because I do rely on unlocking phones given all the travel, and you do too.
Of course.
I mean, we both need it. Like, we can't oh my God, my Galaxy S8 Plus has that T-Mobile locking thing, and I can't circumvent it. I have not figured out a way to unlock that phone. So here's
the thing you should know about T-Mobile reunits.
Yeah.
I learned this the hard way. They are not in the databases.
Yep.
So if you hire an unlocking company to unlock your phone,
they won't work.
Code, you can't.
No.
And you know the app that T-Mobile supplies? If you put
Yes.
your own SIM in there and your account is in good standing, like for me, I've been a customer since, before T-Mobile existed with Voice Stream. So like I'm grandfathered in. The moment I buy a phone from T-Mobile, I can get it unlocked the same day, basically.
I will
Like
send you my
as I
phone,
buy
and you
it,
will.
I
I
can
will
get it
send you
unlocked.
my phone, and you will unlock it for me.
No, but that's the problem. I'm trying to tell you. Review units are not in that database either.
Oh.
So even though I have my SIM in there, I'm a good standing customer and I have a perfectly good T-Mobile phone, I cannot unlock it using their app because it says, nope, this is a review phone. They don't say it that way, but they say like, this phone is not eligible for unlock.
Interesting.
And I'm like, oh, this is so weird. You know why I think that is? Probably because I'm a jerk. And no, listen, hear me out.
You're not.
In the early days of my career as a tech journalist, when I was, before even Engadget, I used to unlock every single review unit I would get.
Same here. I do
On
it.
principle. I would call them. I had this person, this service online that, I was such a good customer. They gave me a discount, basically.
Look at
Every
you.
single phone that crossed my hands that was locked would get unlocked and returned to the reviewer people. Because I was like, I'm doing the world a service. These phones are going to end up in hopefully somebody's hands that is not on that network and are not going to pollute our landfills by being not used simply because they're locked. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Of
I don't
course,
know.
they
I
did
don't know.
not like that.
I had no clue about that. Like, I had no clue that you couldn't like for example, I know that there are certain LG, AT&T phones review units that I've not been able to unlock. Nokia phones are a nightmare to unlock if they're review units. The old ones,
Yeah.
the Lumias. But I had no this is the first time I get a T-Mobile review unit. Usually it's either AT&T or Verizon. And Verizon,
Right.
because of that 750 megahertz band, by law those phones are unlocked.
Yeah.
It takes a little bit for them to pick up the APNs and everything, but if you know how to set up the APNs, in most cases you're good to go, like immediately.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
but yeah, oh my God. Going back to the topic, we were at the E4, right? The Moto E4.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the Moto range, basically. Like, we were just still talking about the fact that there's an event next week and stuff, and so we're
I
excited
can't
about
wait.
the Z2.
I
Z2
can't
Pro.
wait.
So,
I was disappointed about the Z, honestly.
yeah,
I felt the phone was just too thin, and I hated that fingerprint scanner at the front that could not double as a home button. I was constantly pressing that button and pressing that button and pressing that. I was like, who came up with this idea? Like,
yeah, it's
really?
weird, right?
I was like, did you guys ever actually test this phone before throwing it out to the market? Because it was the stupidest thing. Just allow me to use this as a phone button. Why not?
I think there might have been a software update later on that let you do that, because I remember that it was enabled eventually. But you still had to use the software keys to go back and recent apps. Right?
Yes, it was just a nightmare. I mean, it's like, seriously? I mean, Huawei, people complain about the Huawei design where, you press the button and just one button, you press it and it takes you back, or you slide it and it does multitasking. But I like having things in just one button. I don't know about you.
Honestly, I can't get used to it, but I do appreciate choice, so I'm behind it. The new Moto Z2 and the E4 support the gestures.
Mm-hmm.
So you can like do what Huawei does, where you swipe backwards and it goes back, and you swipe forward and it's recent apps, and you can program that oval shaped fingerprint reader to do what you want, which is cool.
Yeah.
But I think for me the Z, I was excited because of the modular approach. I think is the best modular approach implemented to date. And I was excited because it was thin, even though once I used it, I was like, this is too thin. And don't get me wrong, it's not the thickness that's the issue, it's how it feels in hand.
It's how it
so
feels
what
in the
I
hand.
found was that putting those dummy wooden plates on the back, the ones that came in the box, really made a difference for me, because it makes the phone 2 millimeters thicker.
Yes.
But now all of a sudden I can live with it. So
same here. I'm not a case guy, and I don't like using skins or anything, but that was the one phone that I would use that backplate just because it made the phone feel better.
And I did that with all the Moto Zs. I did that with every single one of them. I used a little backplate, and because then it feels good in hand. So the Z, I'm intrigued by the new Z simply because I want to see Snapdragon 835 with this modularity, and I want to see, hopefully, as I said, a headphone jack come back. But more importantly, the first dual lens or dual camera phone from Moto. At least the rumors and the
Yes.
leaks of the photos seem to indicate the thing has a dual camera setup. So it'd be interesting to see, have they gone the Huawei route of monochrome and color, or have they gone the OnePlus route of zoom lens, or the iPhone route for that matter? Zoom
How do you
lens,
feel? How do you feel
and
about
regular.
that, Miriam? You're an expert in photography.
Or have they gone the LG route of wide angle and regular?
How do you feel
I feel?
about that?
Oh.
Yes, you're an expert in
Oh, that's a tough
photography.
one. So here's my thing. In order of preference, the LG setup is my favorite. I really think having a super wide angle is the way to go.
It's the way to go.
Honestly, I think the G6 is the most underloved, not unloved, but underloved phone this year of all the flagships.
Yes.
Because it still is one of my favorites. I really wish that this G6 Plus they announced had a Snapdragon 835 in it, because that would cinch the deal for me.
Yes.
Because once you've lived with 835, like on my OnePlus, on my Galaxy, it's hard to go back.
It's really hard.
It is such a fast chip. It's insane. Oh, wait, I have the U11 as well now. So my point is that I have 3 phones with Snapdragon 835, and I still have a Pixel's 821. My Pixel's my daily drive, Pixel XL to be clear. So to me, this G6 821 is not a bad processor, but I love the screen, I love the camera. I just wish I had a faster processor. So when they did the Plus announcement, which we supposedly is coming to the US at some point, I was hoping for the better processor. But look, aside from that, the wide angles and regular angle setup is my favorite. I just love the versatility. My second choice of dual camera setup would be what Huawei's doing with the P10, P10 Plus, and Mate 9. And I want to talk about this because I know that you have just recently did like a long-term review of the P10, and I have a P10 as well. So let's get to that in a second. But that's my second choice simply because I love monochrome photography, number one. Number two, the way that they are doing enhancing the color cam with the monochrome cam for dynamic range is super effective.
Yeah.
And third, having the ability, because they have the monochrome is a high resolution and the like 20, and the regular one is like what 16 or 12 or whatever.
Yes.
They have the
12.
ability to do like almost like a software based zoom that is lossless.
Yes.
Up to 2 times, which is basically gives you what the iPhone and the OnePlus 5 do, but lossy zoom up to 2 times, but without having an actual dedicated telephoto lens.
Yes, which
And
I don't
so
like.
to me, that's kind of almost the best of all worlds, although I do still prefer having the wide angle from the LG phones. Now, the third choice, obviously, is what Apple and OnePlus are doing, where they have a telephoto for zoom, 2-time optical, always on zoom, and then they have a regular lens as well. And of course, it's interesting the way OnePlus is doing it, putting that 20 megapixel camera on the optical zoom lens, and then a 16 on the regular. I think Apple's implementation is better. That's not surprising versus OnePlus, obviously.
Yeah.
But I have to give OnePlus kudos for doing a decent job, for considering they don't have access to the level of expertise in imaging that Huawei have through Leica, and that LG and Samsung have through experience. So I think they did a good job. But I just do think that the lack of OIS on the OnePlus 5 is what is really killing it for me. Like, it really is killing it. Overall, it's a better shooter than the 3T, yes. But in low light, ugh.
I don't know. For me, the biggest problem, like the telephoto, like I'm doing another video right now on the iPhone 7 Plus. I was like, crap, I don't have any zoomed photos. I don't use it. I do not use that zooming feature. I think I used it once for my son's graduation recently because he was so far away. And even then, the problem is it doesn't always use that telephoto lens. If it's really dark, it won't use it. No, it doesn't. And so
did not know that about the iPhone 7.
No, I mean, try this. Go into a dark room and cover the secondary lens and try to zoom in, and you'll notice that it always will. And the reason why is because since the telephoto lens has so little aperture, it'll default to the regular one if there is not enough light coming in. And
that makes sense.
Yes, it makes all the sense in the world, but then you're not really always getting a telephoto experience. So so I was like, okay, this is kind of useless. Like, I love the whole concept of your portrait mode, which is fine, but works terribly in low light. Which sometimes you actually want some photos in low light in portrait. So I was like, it's a good idea. It's just I don't really use it. for starters, smartphone cameras are already defaulted to what, 27 millimeters, so it's already very cropped into whatever it is that you're taking a photo of.
Yeah.
And then the telephoto, just you get the extra zoom. That's fine, but if it's not always going to work, then what's the point?
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, the thing about the OnePlus at least is that so the OnePlus's behavior is it will let you use the telephoto in low light, but at f over 2.6, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Ouch, right? It's like you get a lot of noise and
Yes.
it falls apart. So
Yes.
they don't prevent you from doing it, but it's like ooh. But they completely disable portrait mode when you're in low light. Completely,
Mhm.
you can't use it.
Because it's terrible. I like that
Well,
they
of course it
disabled
is.
it.
But my
It's
point is
terrible.
that so the iPhone also disables portrait in low light. I was not aware
No,
of that.
it works in low light. It's just terrible. It's horrible.
It's just bad, yeah.
It's choppy. Like you have no idea. It's just forget about it. And then even so, that portrait mode, it looks cool. It's just you're
Such a
using
gimmick, right?
It's a gimmick because you're using two lenses just like you did with the HTC One M8. But you notice all the artificial blurring that they do in the border of the subject, particularly if you're taking a portrait photo of a person in a windy area or of a plant in a windy area. It's gonna look terrible. I'm like, okay, I can understand the purpose of the wide angle. Like if you're in New York City, you want the wide angle.
Yeah.
If you're in the Vatican Museum, you've got 400 people around you and you can't move, you need that wide angle.
Yeah.
There are just certain scenarios, and for me, I use the wide angle mostly for video because one of the worst problems.
Oh my God,
for
it's so good.
Yes,
I know.
one of the worst problems with smartphone cameras is that crop that they do in video. I despise it. Why does it crop so closely to the subject? It's terrible. And so these are things that the G6 is the only phone that can do. Actually, even the V20, even with the V20 having a larger sensor than the G6, the footage from the G6 because of the extra aperture on the wide angle looks so much better
So
than the
much
V20.
better. Yeah, I agree. I think that compromises they made for the going from the V20 to G6 were the right compromises.
Yes.
And the oomph that they have with the extra processing power from the 821 versus the
Yes.
820, you can
Yes.
tell.
Well, you can
The
totally
ISP
tell
on the
difference.
821 is very similar to the ISP on the 835, by the way. That's why the Pixel can do all the magic stabilization and stuff it does.
Oh my God. the
And
Pixel,
the
yes.
820 to 821 is really an ISP story in many ways. So, yeah, I think, look, I think that for me, the portrait mode is a gimmick. I think the best portrait mode, this could be very controversial, I'm warning you, is the Huawei.
It's the Huawei. We have to agree on that. For me right now, regardless of how much I love the camera on the G6, and I can't. It's funny. Like if you ask me, like, what is my daily driver, the phone that I default to the most, it's the G6. And then because I carry two phones, the second phone that I carry is a P10. And it's funny because I was doing the After the Buzz video for the P10, revisiting it after 4 months. And I started flicking into photos because I have to throw a couple of photos on the video. And I'm like, crap, I don't have any color photos. Everything I take from the P10 is monochrome.
Yeah.
I love the black
It's
and
nice,
white.
right?
I
Yeah,
love
and it's real black and white. It's
black
none
and
of
white
this, like,
photography.
Black and white
No,
with all the
it's no
noise
gimmick.
reduced to gray. Yeah. That's the big thing people
No.
understand. Like, what's the difference? And I'm like, you don't get the noise. You don't get the chroma noise, the color noise. You get black and white
No,
noise, but you don't get the chroma noise.
And one of the most important things about black and white photography that a lot of people overlook is you can take photos of very simplistic areas that, they're probably not as colorful. Like, I live in a poor country most of the time. Like, Honduras is a third world country where places are either dirty or, not well, they don't look well, obviously because of the poverty that's around me. But I can take a black and white photo of anything and it'll make it look fancy. It just adds this aura to the photo that
Totally.
I can't describe. I can't describe it, but that's one of the main reasons why I can't put down the Huawei P10. I started using the Mate 9, and the Mate 9 was just so big, I was like, yeah, never mind. I love the practicality of the P10 and the fact that you get all that technology on such a small phone.
Have you tried the P10 Plus?
No, Juan got that review unit.
So I have all three. I have the Mate 9, the P10, the P10 Plus. That's the order in which I received them. The Mate 9 I took to MWC. The big screen, I love big screens, and I have to say that's a big one, but for MWC it was perfect, right? And that long battery life. But then once I got back home, it was like, oh, this is a little big. Then I got the P10, and I'm like, perfect. But then I was like, it's a bit small for me, the display 5 inches. I need 5.5 inches is what I'm learning.
Okay.
So then the P10 Plus arrived, and remember, the P10 Plus's camera has a bit of an advantage over the
Yes.
M8 and the P10 because the
Wider
aperture is
aperture,
even,
yes.
yeah, it's f/1.8 instead of
Yes.
f/2.2. And so here's the thing that is a little disappointing to me, Jaime, is that
Ah.
I do not feel that it's a huge quantum leap of an improvement. There is slight improvement in low light, but frankly, I don't think that they're pushing the envelope of what that camera's hardware can do on the P10 Plus.
Interesting.
Probably because they're using very similar software that they use on the P10 and Mate 9. And they've further refined the software on the P10 and Mate 9 because it's the same software and it's been around for a long time.
Yes.
Whereas the P10 Plus kind of requires special tuning, and they haven't gone into that in-depth special tuning yet.
It could
that does
be,
not mean
but-
you
And the release of the P10 Plus has been very like, what countries have the P10 Plus
I know,
right now?
almost nowhere. And I want to make it clear that, it doesn't make the P10 Plus a bad investment. If you
No.
want the bigger screen, it's also a Quad HD display, which is a big
Yes.
difference. And also, it does have 6 gigs of RAM. So look, if you have the money and you can get it and you're considering it, I would say that these are the things that differentiate from the P10. The
Yes.
faster aperture, the bigger, larger resolution display, and of course the more RAM. The more RAM, I mean, the KEYone 960 is a screamer. I haven't noticed the RAM really making a huge amount of difference, simply because I tend to kill my apps as I go myself. I'm
Yes.
pretty much a OCD about that. But I still think I want to talk about a phone because we've been ranting for a while, but I want to talk about this Mate 9 that was announced a while ago and came out in Europe, and there's also a Mate 9.
The Honor 9.
Sorry, yes. Thank you. The Honor 9. So I want to talk about the Honor 9, which came out a little while ago. And there's also an Honor 9 Plus, I want to say. No, not Plus. It's called something else. But it's like slightly improved. It just has more RAM. That was just announced this week. But anyway,
Yes.
we're not seeing this in the US. Last year we got the
No.
Honor 8, which was basically... We didn't get the P9 and we got the Honor 8, and the P9 and the Honor 8 were very similar, except the P9 was a lot more expensive because it's Huawei and not Honor branded. Honor and
Yeah.
Huawei are owned by the same parent company, Huawei, sorry.
Yes.
So a lot of people might not understand that. It's just two brands under the same umbrella.
Yes.
Huawei does a high end. Honor takes the same concept, slashes the price down to 2/3 and sells it 6 months
But
later.
I have no clue. Like, to be honest with you, was there anybody that you sat down last year, asked about the Honor 8, and didn't give you great commentary?
No, everybody loves it. I loved it
Everybody
too.
loved the Honor 8, and the Honor 9 is just that
So
on
the Honor 9
steroids.
is the P10 equivalent. In almost every spec, it's a P10.
Yes.
And it's more affordable, and in some ways, and I think more beautiful. I
More
actually prefer.
beautiful. More
Dude,
beautiful.
I'll be honest with you. The thing that disappointed me with the P10 and P10 Plus was that they look too much like iPhones. And I understand the marketing behind that, but to me, I loved the P9 last year, and I loved the Honor 8 last year, and the Honor 9 kind of lives up to that very unique Huawei-ish design language that's kind of square and has a crazy finish on the back and all that stuff.
Yes, I have to agree. I don't know. In the case of the Honor 9, I don't know about you. I am very much in love with the P10 in absolutely everything except its audio quality. And, I was like, hey, shoot. I mean, if you do it for the Honor 9, that's great. I love the curves that they added to the back. I love that whole glass effect that it has.
Yeah,
It's a very fancy phone. It's a looker. There is just no way you're going to set that phone on a table and people are not going to stare at it.
It's kind of like the U11 for that, really.
No, yeah.
I mean, the U11 is a looker too.
Yeah, it is a looker so long as you could keep it clean. I don't know what it is about what it is about that finish on Honor phones.
Oh God, it's a fingerprint magnet. It's insane.
Yes. But I don't know. I guess if you think about it, what you're paying, and it's funny when I sit down with my friends, and part of my review of the P10 going into this Honor topic, most people's concept of Huawei phones is actually still a little negative. People still feel that Huawei phones are cheap, and they're like, oh, it's a Huawei. And I'm like, no, you have not used this thing. First of all, it took Qualcomm a full year to catch up to the KEYone 960. A full year.
Yep.
It wasn't until the Snapdragon 835 that there was a processor that was at least as fast as the KEYone 960. And then I don't know about you. If there's anything that I would ask Huawei to add to their phones going forward is better audio and water resistance. But in absolutely everything else, I think Huawei is killing it. Ever since the Nexus 6P, Huawei
Yeah.
has been killing it with their products. And I have to admit, I feel delighted by the experience. I find it delightful, so much so that how often? I mean, Miriam, can we really fall in love with phones? I mean, we have so many
For us
options.
especially, right? Because
For
we're all
us
like,
especially,
we can get anything you want. Yeah.
exactly. And I can't tell you enough how much I've loved the P10 and how much I can't wait to test that Honor 9. I mean, because I feel that I agree with you. I feel that it has a better design and you're not paying so much money for it. And again, it is an awesome, I don't know, the photos on the Honor 8, I don't know about you. Did you notice differences with the P9? Because I did.
Yeah, it was a bit less. I mean, mostly the biggest problem was that there wasn't a real monochrome mode, right?
No,
They
no.
disabled that. Even though the
Exactly.
camera could do it, the monochrome mode was a filter that took the color image and flattened it to mono, which wasn't really the same. Yeah, there
No.
were differences, but they were so minor. I really thought that you got like 90% of the experience for like 70% of the price, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So
Yes. And it's worth it. Would I recommend these phones? Oh, totally. Like, totally.
yeah. So I can't wait to try the Honor 9. I know I kept saying Mate. It's confusing. Honor 9 because I got to play with it in San Francisco last week at a little Huawei, I should say, get together.
Yes.
And they didn't want to answer that question when I said, when is it coming to the US? Because look, we never got the P10 and P10 Plus officially in the US.
No.
When the Mate 9 was announced that it was coming to the US at CES, I was like, okay,
CES.
maybe they're going to bring the P10, the P10 Plus this year. And then they didn't. And so they really pretty much need to bring the Honor 9 to the US right now.
Yes, they do.
So
They
let's
do.
see what happens because we need a phone like that.
I don't understand what Huawei's mentality is with their. I mean, they have very good presence when it comes to very cheap phones, but then when it comes to the flagship, they just don't.
I think they have good mind share. They have like the support of the media. We kind of like their products, but at the same time, they sell maybe 100,000 of them right in the U.S.
Yes.
because they don't have the carrier's blessing. And as you know, politically, Huawei is shunned in the U.S. because they are in bed with the Chinese government.
True.
So it's really hard. Like I'm not saying I think this is completely screwed up. Like if you ask me, we should all be buying Huawei phones because they're awesome, and the carriers should carry them because they're awesome. But I think there's more than the carriers here. There's like a political climate issue that makes it difficult. So if you're Huawei and you can't really get into the U.S. and it's going to be really hard to get into the U.S. and the carriers are going to shun you. Like, you're going to sell 100,000 Mate 9s. When you are selling millions and tens of millions of Mate 9s in China and in India and in
Yes.
Europe,
Yes.
then the US becomes not relevant, right?
Agreed. Yes.
So it's hard to make the business case. Like, you and I are phone lovers. We want to buy these phones on lock, but the reality is you and I won't buy them because we get them as review units. So we're also a part of the problem. So, like, I mean, look, I understand.
Good
All I'm
point.
saying is that I wish for you guys who go out there and put your hard-earned money on a phone and change phones every year, I wish you could taste the forbidden fruit goodness that is Huawei
It
beyond
is.
the Mate 9.
It is. It is. I have to agree with you. It's the phone that I recommend, and at least in Latin America, again, I spend at least 4 months of the year here, and
Yeah.
Huawei's presence in Latin America is big. It's very big, and their mind share is evolving into, oh my god, these phones are really good, and I feel that it has everything to do. Like I have a friend that started with a P8. She fell in love with the P8. She's now got the P9. And she's just waiting for the P10 to be supported by her carrier to upgrade. I
Wow.
think that they've done that loyalty. They've been able to harness that loyalty from customers, which is really hard to achieve, particularly in iPhone world where everybody wants an iPhone or everybody wants a Galaxy, and people are overlooking the quality of other companies like LG and Huawei.
For sure. Have you had some hand time with the Galaxy S8 at all, or S8 Plus?
Yes, I did. I actually broke my
what are your
S8.
quick take on that? I just want to cover it because I know we're trying to talk about all the phones.
Oh
as
my
usual,
god!
but-
So it's funny. The S8 Plus is a smaller phone than the iPhone 7 Plus, and yet for reasons I don't understand, I find it uncomfortable to use.
Ah.
I don't know what it is. I don't
Have
know
you
if
tried
it's
the
the
Plus?
weight. Yes, I'm talking about the Plus. I
Oh, you're
don't
talking
know.
about the Plus. You're talking
Yes,
about the
I don't
regular.
know
Okay.
if it's the weight distribution. So here's the thing. I decided that I was going to stick to the S8 because first of all, the unit that I got from the S8 was the Orchid Gray, which was the color that I wanted.
Nice.
And then second, because I started using the Plus, and it was just there's just so much finger travel on a display this large that I was like, it's so awesome to consume content with, but if you want to really use it like a phone, and it's 6-7 a.m. and you're getting off the subway, getting off Bryant Park, and you're rushing to get to a meeting in Times Square, I dropped the phone twice.
Oops.
I dropped the phone twice because
Wow.
it was just so hard to fumble, and my hands are large, and a phone like this you have to carry in a case because there's just no way you're not going to smash that thing. And yes,
Yeah.
in the case of my S8, I smashed it even with a case because of the curved display. Because of the curved
Yeah, because
display,
the case can't really protect the display properly.
it
Right.
doesn't protect the display
Yeah.
property, and so I broke the S8, and that's one of the main reasons why I stopped using the S8 Plus, because I was like, okay, if I broke the S8, what's going to happen to the Plus? It's going to be even worse, and the cases just make the phone look even bigger. And so,
Yeah.
to be honest with you, it's not that I don't like them. I do.
They're amazing.
They're amazing phones. I love this. Believe it or not, I'm one of the few that actually likes the software. I
Actually, I have to say this year, I feel like they finally nailed the user experience to the point where I don't feel like I want to throw the phone against the wall and immediately replace the launcher. So
love the
kudos to
software.
Samsung for
Yes.
actually giving us a polished, quick, dynamic, nicely designed user experience for once.
Now, question: do you use the secure folder?
No.
Oh, I use it a lot, and
Oh, yeah.
it's funny.
It's not
I
the
don't
only
use
phone
it.
that has that, by the way. There's a bunch
Oh
of
no,
phones that
Huawei
have that.
Huawei has. So I actually don't use it to lock photos or stuff. I use it because I need a separate WhatsApp or I need a separate Facebook. And
cool.
and so it allows me to have a company Facebook and my personal one. It allows me to have a company Twitter, and and I like to keep them in separate apps, mainly because I could probably upload something that I don't want to by accident on my personal app, and I just like to keep them separate. Which, by the way, I think Huawei was the first company to do that app dupe.
Yeah,
thing.
and OnePlus has something similar.
Yes,
on the 5.
and OnePlus has something as well. So for me, it's the user interface. I love the camera on the S8. I can't recommend that phone enough, but I recommend the smaller variant mainly because it's not too small, not too big, at least for me.
Right. I haven't had any issues with the sizes, and to me, getting more real estate on a phone that it can hold actually is pretty amazing. So I'd be happy with either the S8 and the S8 Plus. I've reviewed both at the same time. I had to give back the S8, so I have a Plus right now only. But honestly, I think to me the big revolution here was really started by LG with the G6.
It was started with
one
the
display.
Yes.
The ultra wide screen is the killer app. And if any of the rumors we're seeing of the Pixel version 2 or Pixel XL version 2 are correct, I cannot wait to get myself a Pixel, which is my daily driver.
And to be honest with you, the reason why I drift to the G6 are a few factors. Number one is that wide angle. Number two is obviously the wide display. Number three is the mil-spec A10G.
Oh my God, yes.
That
the waterproofing
phone,
and everything?
yes. That phone has withstood a couple of falls into rock. And it looks pristine. So that's my next After the Buzz video over how the phone has aged. And oh my God, like the G6 has aged like marvelously. My only problem with that phone, well, two. Number one, LG, if you're listening, please get rid of the software. Like, really,
God, yeah.
Just get rid of it. It's just tell your software department to just to focus on something else. And the second thing would be that display. LG needs to move into OLED territory. I mean,
I know, right?
What are we waiting for? Like the display doesn't do an adequate job at balancing for ambient light as AMOLED does. It does a terrible job when you're wearing polarized sunglasses, which are the only ones that I can use. And so, I'm like, really? And obviously it's not Daydream compatible, which I don't care about that, but it's really, we need to move away from LCD. I think there's a point for OLED being the best technology for smartphones.
And ironically, LG makes some of the best OLED displays. In fact, they're rumored to be making the OLED display for the iPhone, for the next generation, like the 10th anniversary, iPhone X, iPhone Pro, iPhone 8, the one that's not going to be like the others.
Yes.
And so I just don't get it. I agree
don't
with you. I
get
think
it.
it might be an economy of scales issue. I don't know.
But what economy of scales? They're not selling much of that phone. If anything, this is the company that
well,
should
my
be
point is
doing
they're keeping
it.
the output for their partners. Is possible what they're
I
doing.
get it. Yeah, it could be.
And I mean, honestly, I agree with you. The software and you know, Huawei used to be pretty bad on the software
It
front,
was
but I feel that
terrible.
it's improved a bit with the version 5 of their UI. With
Yes.
the Mate, starting with the Mate 9, and now a lot of the older phones are getting that UI too.
Well, it looks like stock Android with a skin. I love that.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. It's like I've managed to get the G6 to a place where I'm happy with Google Now Launcher and the Google Keyboard, the Gboard, but it's still, you know, a little challenging. But anyway, what I'm saying though is that here's the way this is all going to get resolved for you, my friend, is that LG is rumored to be making the Pixel. So
Yes.
you're essentially going to get that G6 you want. Sadly, probably without the wide-angle lens, though. But in a Pixel form factor with pure Android, and that is what excites me about the new Pixel, because I have to pick a daily driver every year. It's too much work to migrate my stuff every 3 weeks. And so I have the Pixel and the Nexus typically as my daily driver, and this year it's an XL, and I want next year's XL, and I will not be able to use a daily driver that doesn't have an ultra wide screen after my experience with G6 and the Galaxy S8, and that's what is, you know, the future, I think. So
I don't know. I wasn't able to use the Pixel XL just because of those insane bezels. Like, really?
oh my god, it's so bad. But that's an HTC issue. I mean, HTC U11 still has a lot of bezel too, you know?
No, not just a lot of bezels. I don't think a phone has more bezels. Like, they have this whole array around the display on the sides that I'm like, really, HTC? Like, really? Come on. It's terrible.
It's definitely an issue. You know, I think though this new Pixel is going to be good, and it's going to solve a lot of the boring aesthetics issues of the Pixel, but the camera on the Pixel is still a force to be reckoned with, despite the lack of OIS, which is really impressive.
I don't know how they do it. Like, that software stabilization on the Pixel,
It's
it looks like Morticia Adams. Like, it looks like if you're walking and you're not walking, and it's just surreal. I think the best way to describe it is surreal. But I wish that the final result that you see when you pull the footage out of the phone were as good as what you see, particularly when you're recording video. It's not that
like,
good.
To me, the G6 is so good at video. And the Galaxy S8, oh my god, the video coming out of the Galaxy S8.
The video coming out of the Galaxy
Wow.
S8. The only problem with the S8, because I do vlogging every now and then, like, right. Samsung, if you're listening, do me a favor. Who came up with that crop for the selfie camera for video?
Oh.
Like, really? Like, my cheeks take up like 30 or like 70% of the footage. It's horrible. It's horrible. And this is the reason why I love the G6. You can have wide angle video or regular video in a shot, and it's just really awesome. That's the way everybody should do it. It should become a standard, like, seriously.
Yeah, totally. A few more phones I want to throw out there before we wrap up, because it's been a bit over an hour, and I think we have a few more minutes. Nokia 8, Note 8. We've talked very briefly about the iPhone 8X Pro, whatever, but I covered that a little bit last week too. I didn't mention the Note 8 and the Nokia 8 yet much in the podcast. What are your thoughts on what's coming there?
I don't know what to make of Nokia, honestly. I like their designs. Show me. My mentality with Nokia.
Yeah, let's wait and see, right? I mean, look,
exactly.
The leaks look amazing. Dual camera. It does not have an ultra wide screen, but it does have sort of like that Galaxy S7, like, rounded edges screen, or at least very little bezel screen.
Yes,
it's hard to tell if it's flat with round glass or if it's round display with round glass. It looks hot. Nokia, if Zeiss is on board for the camera, supposedly. So that could mean some pretty interesting imaging chops. I've always been a huge fan of Nokia, despite all their weird iterations and branches, because the Lumias are technically also kind of like Nokias, even though they're Microsoft or whatever.
Do me a favor, Nokia, please hire your engineers back. Just pull them back.
Exactly.
Because your imagery, like, believe it or not, Miriam, I'm still using a Lumia 930.
Oh yeah.
I still use a Lumia 930. There still is no room for comparison with things like rich capture, for example.
Well, the 1020 is the one you need to pull out if you want to. Oh, sorry, the 950. The 950 is probably the best, to this day, the best camera phone of all phones.
If you can make it work, and if 4K video actually works, which never did for me.
Well, yeah, but my point is, for just stills, the 950 is the best of that 20 megapixel series of phones that the 930 is a part of. And of course, if you want more pixels and doing the crazy software zoom, the 1020 is your guy.
Yeah, but the 1020, the problem was because of the processor.
So old, everything else. I know.
Yeah, it's just the processor limitations. It doesn't support rich capture. It's the reason why I don't really care about my 1020 anymore.
Yeah, try the 950. Like seriously, if you don't have, if you haven't yet, I think for stills, very little can touch it. The dynamic range on that phone is just mind-boggling. Just like, holy crapola.
Yes. Just do me a favor, Nokia, please pull your engineers back. They're awesome. These guys are awesome.
Say, we forget, our memories are short because we play with so many phones. I want to give a hat tip to Steve Litchfield of the phone show in the UK, who's a big camera phone guy. He goes back, way back to the Symbian days, like me. We've been reviewing phones for 10 years. And he told me, he says, pull out your 950 or 950 XL, go out there and take some photos sometime and talk to me again. And I said, what do you mean? That phone, like, that's so old now. And he goes, no, do it. Do yourself a favor and do it. I went out there, I did exactly what he said, and I was blown away by the imaging quality on that phone. We forget so quickly because I couldn't use that phone as a daily driver. It just wasn't usable for me, right?
Well, you know how much I look up to you, Miriam. Of course I'm going to do this after we hang up, by the way.
Make sure you go through all the updates. It's going to take you like 2 hours or 4 hours to update the phone. Seriously.
Oh, no, snap. I left that phone in New York, so it'll be until I go back. It'll be until early August.
Welcome to Windows Nightmare. Windows 10 Phone Edition took literally 4 hours in a row to update all the apps and the multiple OS updates in the year I didn't use it. 4 freaking hours.
Oh my God. Like for me, one of our favorite reviews, not that I'm going to sit down here and make a shameless plug, but when Michael Fisher was working for us, his review of the Lumia 950 and just covering all the problems that phone had is hilarious. It's hilarious. Yeah. It's like 2 minutes of all the bugs that he went through and how many different phones they sent him. And it was just terrible. It was hilarious.
It was, and that's why I never used it for more than one road trip. But the road trip I used it for was when I drove from the West Coast to Austin, Texas for South by Southwest in 2016.
Nice.
And we went through all the national parks in my camper van, and the pictures I took. Whoa! I mean, seriously. I look back at that album and I'm like, yep, 950.
I'll win. Look into it, definitely.
But anyway, so the Nokia 8, and then the Note 8, obviously, it looks like it's going to be a Galaxy S8 on steroids with dual camera, basically, and a pen, right?
Well, the dual camera is still, I don't know.
Still tentative? You don't think they're going to do it?
They have to. I don't think Samsung can play ball anymore. They have to. They have to figure it out somehow. I hope they did.
I think if they do it, they'll do it right.
I hope they don't do the telephoto.
Oh, me too. I hope they do. Yeah, I hope they do something else. Maybe, I hope they do the wide angle. That would be awesome.
That would be awesome. I mean, I feel that LG, and particularly in the case of the G6 where they removed most of the barrel distortion on the sides, the G6 is just the phone. I hate that it doesn't sell because it is the phone. Honestly.
You know what amazes me most about G6's imaging this year is that the pixels are 1.13 microns. They're tiny.
Yes, they are.
And they managed to get an insane amount of low light performance out of that camera, despite the fact that every competitor of theirs has 1.4, 1.5 micron large pixels.
Yeah,
everybody. And of course, they all have really small apertures now. I mean, small numbered, large apertures. So that's not the issue. It's just I am amazed at the image processing they pull off.
I don't know how they're able to do it. It's a little, like for example, in video particularly, they're not able to pull it off as well. But even then, like I grabbed some sunset shots from Mare Magnum in Barcelona. They're exquisite. I have no other word to describe it. I mean, exquisite.
Honestly, if they put an 835 in that thing, they can do the processing that they're doing for photos in video in real time at 4K, and it would work. And
I know that's why I can't wait for the V30.
Yeah, exactly. The V30. Like, we haven't talked about it much on the podcast here or with you at all. But the V30, I'm really looking forward to because big thing I hated about the V30, V20 and V10 was that the V10 was better. The V20 was just boring. But the V10 had an interesting design, but the V20 was boring. And I love the design aesthetic of the G6. Yes. And I want scale that up. Give me a bigger screen. Give me a Snapdragon 835. Put the HD audio in there, and then give me improve the camera just slightly, and holy crap balls, I'm on board. 100%.
Same here. Same here. I cannot wait for the V30. It's probably one of the phones that I'm waiting for most, but I want an OLED display. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I would love to have an OLED Quad HD 5.5 inch, or like not 5.5, I mean 6.3 inch widescreen, like Galaxy S8 Plus.
I think that's the way they should do it, because if you notice, I mean, the LG, the G6 Plus doesn't have a larger display. It's pretty much just different color options and a little bit better specifications.
And HD audio.
And HD audio, pretty much.
And more RAM, I think it
exactly.
goes up to 6. Yeah.
Exactly. That's all the options you get, so they have to pull it off with the V30, in my opinion.
Well, let's wait and see. I think it's going to be super interesting and exciting. So, just so you guys all know, in the next week when we'll be discussing on the podcast is obviously the Z2, Moto Z2, and the Force, I guess.
Are you going to be in New York?
I'm not going to be able to go to New York. I unfortunately, well, there's 2 reasons. Number 1 is I have a meeting I can't change in San Francisco, and
Nice.
second is I even if I could go, I don't have an assignment. So flying out to New York and paying out of my own pocket
Yeah, no.
is a little hard to swallow just to go to a moto event, as much as I love moto. But I'm hoping, I've pestered them and asked if they're going to do any kind of demos in SF. They said no, but I'm hoping that'll change. And if not, I'm sure they'll send me a review in it very quickly, because I've been a big fan of the Z2 play. So we'll see how it goes. But
Yeah, my relationship
looking
with
forward.
Moto is not the best. That's something I need to change.
It's tough, because they
It's
went
weird.
through a lot of changes when
Yes.
they became a part of Lenovo. So
Yes.
I had to rebuild that relationship, basically.
Yes.
And so look forward to this. And then, for the rest of the summer, really, we're looking at IFA, right? We're looking at the Note 8.
Are we going to be in Berlin?
I'm not going to Berlin because I do Burning Man every
What?
year. I know every year. Like, I've never actually. Are you ready for this? I've never been to IFA.
Are you kidding me?
No, because I work at Burning Man, so I'm at Burning Man every year. So even when I was at Engadget, I took those 2 weeks off, and I was watching from a distance.
Miriam. Oh, my
know.
God.
I know, but it's the way it is. Look, I'm counting on you and all the wonderful people I know, Michael Fisher, everybody's been on this podcast, to give me the lowdown.
How are we going to have fun without you? Are you kidding me?
Well, it's going to be different, but I'll be at Mobile Congress, I'll be at CES, I'll be at, whatever other events are going to get thrown our way before then. I'll be in Portugal for Web Summit at one point in November. I went last year, and that was kind of awesome. But hey, look, Note 8 probably happening around the time of IFA. That Nokia 8, I have a feeling we might see before IFA. And then after IFA, it's iPhone.
Oh,
and
my God.
Then it's going to be V30, and then it's going to be Pixel.
Well, it's going to be V30 just once. People.
Yeah, you're right.
Even LG
You and
is
I
terrible
will be
about
going
marketing their
V30,
phones.
V30. Yeah, I know it's terrible. So it'll just be V30. It'll be iPhone, V30, and then Pixel.
Yes, indeed.
And then
I
we'll be
can't
done
wait
for the year. There might be some like last minute Christmas phones, as I call them.
Well, I can't
we'll
wait.
see.
I think that the market is growing a little with the recent changes. I like the fact that Samsung is finally selling well with the S8 after years of not being able to pick up, and then the whole Note 7 debacle. I mean, the market needs to pick up somehow. I don't know. I
mean,
agree
I
with
think
companies. Phones were getting boring.
Yeah, we've had some really exciting phones this year. I mean, I said that last year in 2016. I was like, this has been a good phone year for flagships. And this year I'm like, holy crap, it's even better.
This is even better. Exactly. I think that there's no. I think that yes, you're right. I mean, last year was awesome, but this year is just unprecedented, and I love it.
Last year got really awesome in the fall for me because the Pixel, because the V20, because the G5 was disappointing. The Galaxy S7 was awesome. The Galaxy S7 was like, okay, wow, Samsung, awesome. But the Note 7 was a debacle, and then of course, thankfully there was the iPhone, and then there was the Pixel, and then there was the V20 that kind of rescued the rest of the year. But the beginning of the year was a little slow, and of course the Moto Z, arguably, I know you don't feel super excited about it, but I think it does introduce this modularity in a practical way for once that it can't be irrelevant, like it can't be thrown out the window.
No, it's not irrelevant. I feel in the case of Moto, bear in mind I used to be a Motorola customer for years. I love their stuff and I love their innovation. I don't know. I don't know if it's their marketing or I don't know what is it about Moto that just they don't take off as they used to. I mean, think about it. Things like call quality on a Motorola phone. It's like if you're talking to an analog phone from back in the days. They sound amazing. There are things about Moto that other companies just are not able to pull
Nokia
off.
is the same way. It's like
Yes.
you can tell these guys have made phones for decades because they sound so great.
They sound so great. In the essentials, I mean, they do a phone right. Oh, and it's also a smartphone. These are the things that I like. People are like, no, people don't make phone calls anymore. I'm like, really? Who are you talking to? I make phone calls. I do care about these things.
I know. I like having a phone call from time to time. Listen, on that note, we should probably wrap it up. There you go. That came out. And do you want to plug yourself? Tell people where they can find you on Twitter, where you write, and all that good stuff.
So I am at Pocketnow. You can find me on Twitter at Jaime_Rivera, on Instagram at Jaime Rivera. Instagram is what I use most. I try to copy Miriam's passion for photography as much as possible. And you can also find me mostly on YouTube on the Pocketnow Daily. I have a daily news show where we cover everything you want to know from mobile technology in 3 minutes. It's a
lifesaver, by the way, because if I could, sometimes you find you cover stuff I forgot or I didn't see. It's great.
Thank you so much for watching. It's really an honor. Thank you.
Cool. Well, listen, guys, you know where to find me. I'm at Tankgirl, TNKGRL. Like the comic book character, just drop the vowels on Twitter. Find me on my YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Miriam Joire, my legal name. That's MYRIAMJOIRE. And of course, the Mobile Tech Podcast is mobiletechpodcast.com. If you want to subscribe, go to that URL. You can subscribe there. We're also on Pocket Casts, on iTunes. And I want to thank the lovely folks at World Podcasts for making this happen, for hosting the podcast, for editing the podcast. We couldn't do it without them. And again, tune in next week. We will have all kinds of Moto Z2 love, and I'll have another awesome guest. Thanks, everyone, and take care.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.